President Mnangagwa promised a leaner government, and he's delivered. He's appointed 32 ministers and 6 deputies, down from 65 in total in the previous administration. Among the new appointees are 2 military officers. Air Marshal Perence Shiri is in charge of agriculture, and Major General Sibusiso Moyo is the new foreign minister. Their inclusions are seen as giving the military a role to superintend over government, particularly in the mainstay agriculture sector and on the foreign policy front.
They have been prepared for transformation. They have been prepared for how to run with the dictates of global economics. And I believe the ability is there. See, our military should not be the military that we have been known in the conventional African sense. Our military, given the action that they've taken, is a military that is now going towards socio-economic transformation.
Another new face is Winston Chitando, the new mines minister, who was formerly the managing director of Zimbabwe's second biggest platinum producer. Despite speculation, there are no opposition members in this government. And while the majority of ministers have been retained, this time round the public's expectations of them have been set several notches higher.
People had hoped for inclusivity, but remember, he's got a legacy to follow, a legacy that he has to endorse that is coming from the ruling party. And I believe that cabinet is a reflection of those 3 things. The old faces, particularly when you look at Minister Chinamasa, should be wearing a new jacket of carrying over the process from where he left under the previous regime.
Patrick Chinamasa is substantive finance minister again. He's expected to resume his debt clearance plan and re-engagement with international lenders. He's already clarified changes to empowerment laws which make the 51-49% requirement applicable in the resource sector only. Former President Robert Mugabe had made a pronouncement to that effect in 2016, but it was yet to be made into law.
That alignment is going to take place sooner rather than later. That is in the area of indigenization. We are also going to move with speed to remove any hurdles in our operating environment to make foreign direct investment attractive to come to Zimbabwe.
Other fresh faces have been appointed to the ministries of local government, sport, justice, labor and tertiary education. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
All right then, for a couple of days we've been asking where's the new cabinet, now it's in place, what do they have to do? Let's get you some answers. Farai Mwakutuya is live in the Zimbabwean capital of Harare tonight. Farai, good to see you. Let's start with Patrick Chinamasa. As finance minister, he tried to cut bonuses, he tried to reduce the size of the civil service in terms of headcount and the wage bill. Now that he's back in charge, should we expect him to try that even more aggressively this time round?
Well, Rama, first of all, I'm glad that, when we last spoke on this show a couple of days ago, I hoped that we would have this conversation we're having now before the end of the week, and indeed we are. I can tell you that we certainly expect Patrick Chinamasa to push through and to pick up where he left off in terms of those cost-cutting measures. One of the issues that has stalled Zimbabwe's re-engagement with the IMF is the fact that it hasn't implemented or followed through on some of the reforms that it's been, asked to and recommended to do. That is cutting its headcount, cutting its wage bill, amongst many others. And we expect that that will happen. The President, Emmerson Mnangagwa, had a meeting with permanent secretaries of all the ministries earlier this week, and one of the things he said was that, there would be mergers in some of those ministries. They would be integrated and brought together, which should result in, a lower headcount. He also said that all public officers who've reached retirement age, and there happens to be a number of them, would be retired. So certainly we expect that there will be a resumption of those measures to reduce the wage bill, to reduce government expenditure going forward, Rama.
Indeed, in the past it was the then President Robert Mugabe who stopped the austerity measures that the finance minister had in mind. But if scaling down the public wage bill means cuts, say, to the military, will the generals, and including those in government and the President as well, since he's reliant on their support, will they all go along with that idea?
Well, Rama, it's pretty difficult to say, but what I can tell you is that what we are most likely to see when it comes to the uniformed forces is perhaps not a reduction in the number of the officers, but perhaps a redeployment. So we might see army officers, army personnel, military personnel being moved into other departments, into other state-owned enterprises, where also there's been some delinquency of performance. So it's likely that military precision, military discipline may be brought in there to kickstart, to ignite and initiate the performance that's required. And so it may not be doing away or laying off some of those officers, but perhaps a redeployment into areas where there might be shortcomings and where there might be a feeling that a military presence is required, Rama.
Indeed, I'm sure some of us who are watching this will draw parallels with what's happened in Egypt and in Pakistan. Let's focus on the debt, though. Zimbabwe owes the African Development Bank and the World Bank nearly $2 billion just in arrears. When will it start formally re-engaging with these institutions to agree on a plan to clear out those arrears?
Well, we expect that this re-engagement will begin almost immediately. Zimbabwe has come up with Finance Minister Chinamasa had come up back then in the old regime with a debt clearance plan that was called the Lima strategy, and we expect that he will resume that. What that entails is that Zimbabwe will find some concessionary lending from someone else, which it will then use to pay off this debt and re-engage with those international lenders so it can get fresh funding from them. And all that had been held up, all that had been stalled and stifled because of the political bickering, because of the factional fighting that had consumed government and the ruling party. But we expect now that there's this new era, this new dispensation, that that re-engagement will be resumed, and hopefully this time with effective results that we'll be able to see.
Indeed. Let me wrap up with a question on something you've just mentioned. Right now, none of the Bretton Woods bodies will lend to Zimbabwe again without those arrears being cleared out. But as the country's public finances currently stand, they can't make such payments in their current state. So if Zimbabwe is going to be looking for a bridging loan, and it has been for a while, where's that money going to come from? Who will lend to Zimbabwe in its current state?
Well, it's pretty difficult to say, but what I think is that this newfound dispensation, this newfound optimism, this new era will be one option that the monetary authorities, government officials will go to sell to international lenders, to bilateral partners, and say, look, we're a new team, there's a new leadership, a new dispensation, a clean slate we want to start from. Please, let's work out a deal where you can give us some money and we'll work out some terms to pay it off. This is our plan going forward. So certainly that is something that can be on the cards and that Zimbabwe can do. But I think what's quite interesting is, and we've spoken about it as well this past week, is this amnesty that's been announced for people who have siphoned money out of the country. If in 2016 the central bank estimates that about $1.8 billion were illegally spirited out of the country, if a portion of that was to come back, that is a great head start, a great platform where Zimbabwe could start from, which would, help to ease some of these challenges that it's facing. So there is that strategy to look to international partners, to bilateral partners, to assist and come in and help this new team that has been assembled, this new leadership, but also to mobilize the resources that are available, that were available locally, that have been legally, taken out of the country, and that could be a way that Zimbabwe could start to build up its resources to be able to repay some of its loans and dig itself out of this hole, Rama.
Indeed. Farai Makutuya there live in Harare. He runs Point on our coverage in the Southern African economy. Of course, expect to hear a lot from him in future bulletins. Thank you.